Something was stolen from you before you were born. Not money, not land. Something far more valuable. The ability to power your entire home, your car, your city, for free. No bills, no wires, no meters clicking away on the side of your house. And the man who figured out how to do it? He died alone, broke, in a hotel room, while the government raced through his door before his body was even cold. His name was Nikola Tesla. And what happened to him, what was done to his work, his legacy, and his machines, is one of the most extraordinary and heartbreaking stories in all of human history. Not a conspiracy theory, not a myth. Documented, verified, and confirmed by declassified FBI files that the United States government fought for decades to keep hidden from the public. Well, this is not the story you were taught in school. This is the real one. Let's go back to 1856. A tiny village in what is now Croatia. A child is born during a lightning storm, and the midwife, supposedly unnerved by the flashing sky, tells his mother it is a bad omen. His mother looks at the storm and says, "No, this child will be a child of light." She had no idea how right she was. Tesla grew up in a world that had no framework for what his mind could do. He could perform complex mathematical calculations entirely in his head. He could visualize machines in 3 dimensions, complete, rotating, functional, before he ever touched a single piece of metal. His teachers accused him of cheating. His professors refused to believe that a human brain could work the way his did. And yet, every machine he visualized in his mind, every calculation he ran in that extraordinary internal laboratory, they worked every single time. He came to America in 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket, a letter of introduction, and ideas that would eventually power the modern world. He went to work for Thomas Edison, and here is where the story starts to get dark. Because Edison saw exactly what Tesla was and understood immediately what that meant. It meant competition. It meant a threat to everything Edison had built. Edison had built his entire business empire on direct current, DC electricity. It was inefficient, it was dangerous, and it could only travel short distances before losing power. Entirely. You needed a power station every mile just to keep the lights on. Edison knew this, but he also knew that his investors had poured millions into it, and he was not going to let some immigrant genius with a Serbian accent destroy his empire. Tesla had a better idea. Alternating current, AC electricity. It could travel hundreds of miles without losing power. It was safer to transmit and far more efficient. Tesla offered to redesign Edison's entire electrical system. For him, Edison said he would pay Tesla $50,000 if he could do it. Tesla worked through days and nights without rest. He redesigned the system completely. It worked brilliantly. And when Tesla went to collect his $50,000, Edison laughed at him. He said it was an American joke, and Tesla did not understand American humor. He offered Tesla a $10 a week raise instead. Tesla quit on the spot. What followed was one of the most dramatic battles in the history of science and business, the war of currents. Edison against Tesla, DC against AC, old money against a new future. Edison ran a ruthless campaign to destroy Tesla's reputation. He electrocuted animals publicly, horses, dogs, an elephant, using Tesla SAC current, trying to convince the public it was deadly. He called AC electricity the executioner's current. He lobbied governments. He spread fear. But the physics did not care about Edison's lobbying. AC worked better. George Westinghouse believed in Tesla, partnered with him, and fought back. And in 1893, at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Tesla and Westinghouse lit up the entire fair using alternating current, 100,000 light bulbs blazing into the night for the first time in history. The crowd was speechless. Some people wept. The future had arrived. The war of currents was over. Tesla had won. But winning the war was not the same as winning the peace, because even as AC electricity began rolling out across America, Tesla was already thinking beyond it. He was not interested in selling electricity the way you sell oil, by the meter, by the barrel, per unit consumed. Tesla wanted something different, something that would change not just how electricity was distributed, but what electricity meant for human civilization. He wanted to give it away for free. In 1899, Tesla left New York City and headed to Colorado Springs. He had secured funding from 2 investors, John Jacob Astor and a dry goods merchant named Crawford, and had been given free use of land and power by a local electrical company. He built a laboratory unlike anything that had ever existed. At its center was what he called a magnifying transmitter, a colossal resonance device 52 feet in diameter, capable of generating millions of volts of electricity and producing artificial lightning bolts more than 100 feet long. The thunder from those lightning strikes was reportedly heard 15 miles away. What Tesla discovered in Colorado Springs in the summer of 1899 would consume the rest of his life. On July 3rd of that year, he made what he later called the most important discovery he ever made. He determined that the Earth itself was a conductor. not just a passive rock, but an electrically active sphere with its own resonant frequencies. The whole planet vibrated like a tuning fork struck at just the right pitch. If you could match that frequency, if you could tap into the Earth's own electrical resonance, you could transmit power anywhere on the globe without a single wire. He tested this. He lit up 200 light bulbs placed on the ground 26 miles away from his laboratory, transmitting power wirelessly through the Earth itself. Photographs from that test still exist. This was not theory. This was a demonstration. This was real. One night in July 1899, sitting alone in his laboratory in the dark, Tesla's instruments began picking up a peculiar signal, rhythmic, repeating, unmistakably structured. It was not static. It was not interference. It was a pattern of counting signals that seemed to come from beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Tesla would later write that he believed he had intercepted communications from another intelligence. Scientists ridiculed him for this. A century later, researchers replicating his experiment determined that what Tesla almost certainly picked up was radio emissions from Io, one of Jupiter's moons, passing through Jupiter's magnetic field. Tesla had discovered extraterrestrial radio signals by accident in 1899. He just did not know what he was listening to. He left Colorado Springs in January 1900 with unpaid electricity bills, revolutionary discoveries, and a plan that would change everything. He was going to build a tower, not just any tower, a tower that would provide free wireless electricity to every human being on the planet. He called it Wardenclyffe. In 1901, Tesla purchased 200 acres of land in Shoreham on the north shore of Long Island, New York. He hired the most celebrated architect in America, Stanford White, to design the facility. And he persuaded J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker on earth, a man whose personal fortune was larger than the United States Treasury, to invest $150,000 in the project. In today's money, that is approximately $5 million. But here is what Tesla did not fully tell Morgan. Morgan believed he was funding a wireless communications tower, a competitor to Marconi's transatlantic radio system. What Tesla was actually building was something Morgan could never allow to exist. The Wardenclyffe Tower rose 187 feet into the Long Island sky, topped with a 55-ton copper dome. Below the tower, iron rods plunged 120 feet into the earth. A root system of copper and steel designed to tap into the planet's electrical resonance exactly as Tesla had mapped it in Colorado Springs. The structure was not just a tower, it was a planetary antenna. It was designed to use the Earth itself as a conductor and the upper atmosphere as a return circuit, creating a global electrical system in which anyone on the planet, anywhere, could draw power by simply sinking a rod into the ground. No meter, no bill, no corporation controlling who got electricity and who didn't. When J.P. Morgan realized the full scope of what Tesla was building, he asked a question that sealed the project's fate. He asked, "If anyone can draw on this power anywhere on Earth, then where do I put the meter?" Tesla had no answer, because there was no meter. The power was free. Morgan cut off funding immediately. He refused to provide a single dollar more, and he was powerful enough to ensure that no other major investor would touch Tesla's project either. Without money, construction stalled. Workers left. The laboratory fell silent. Tesla suffered what was described as a complete nervous breakdown. In 1903, one night in desperation, he powered up the tower and fired it at full capacity. The crackling bolts of energy were visible as far away as Connecticut, 100 miles. People in towns across Long Island came out of their houses and stared into the sky. Tesla gave no explanation the following day. The tower never ran at full power again. By 1917, the Wardenclyffe Tower was demolished and sold for scrap to pay Tesla's hotel debts. A machine designed to power the entire planet was sold for scrap metal. Let that land for just a moment. But the story does not end at Wardenclyffe, because Tesla kept working. Even as the money dried up, even as the laboratories closed, even as he moved from the grand suite at the Waldorf Astoria to progressively smaller and cheaper rooms, Tesla kept working. His mind never stopped. If anything, the isolation drove him deeper into a territory of thought that nobody else could follow him into. He worked on a bladeless turbine, a revolutionary engine in which a fluid or gas spun a series of closely spaced disks through the principle of boundary layer adhesion, rather than the impact and push mechanics of all conventional turbines. It had almost no moving parts. It was extraordinarily efficient. For decades after Tesla's death, engineers dismissed it as impractical. Then, in the 21st century, researchers studying Tesla's original patents discovered that the Tesla turbine was not only practical, but outperformed conventional turbines under certain conditions. Today, it is being seriously studied for applications in micropower generation, geothermal energy, and aerospace propulsion. The forgotten turbine came back to life, confirmed by modern science more than 100 years after Tesla first drew its blueprint. He worked on what he called a valvular conduit, A pipe with no moving parts that could allow fluid to flow freely in one direction while resisting flow in the other direction through its geometric shape alone. A fluid diode engineered from nothing but curves and loops in a pipe. Engineers of his era considered it curiosity, too inefficient to be useful. Then, in 2021, researchers at New York University published a study in the journal Nature Communications demonstrating that the Tesla valve, as they now call it, is far more functional than anyone had realized. The study showed it could be used to harness the vibrations in engines and machinery to pump fuel, coolants, and lubricants without any powered pump at all. A completely passive fluid control system. Over a century after Tesla patented it, scientists are still unlocking what it can do. And then there were the inventions that disappeared entirely. In his later years, Tesla claimed to be working on something he called teleforce. The press called it a death ray. Tesla hated that name. He insisted it was not a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of peace. A directed energy device that could project a concentrated beam of charged particles through the open air with sufficient force to destroy any aircraft or missile at a range of 200 miles. He believed that if every nation possessed such a device, war would become impossible. No army could move, no fleet could sail, no bomber could fly. The mutual assured destruction of the particle beam would make conflict obsolete. Tesla was 84 years old when he made these claims, living alone in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, surviving largely on warm milk and honey, feeding the pigeons on his windowsill every day with a devotion that bordered on love. The scientific establishment had largely abandoned him by this point. His claims about teleforce were treated as the fantasies of a brilliant mind gone strange with age. On January 7, 1943, a maid at the Hotel New Yorker opened the door to room 3327 and found Nikola Tesla dead. He was 86 years old. He died alone. Within hours, his nephew, Sava Kosanovic, a Yugoslav official, went to the hotel room. By the time he arrived, Tesla's body had already been removed, and something else was missing. A black notebook that Tesla always kept, several hundred pages, some marked simply with the word government, was gone from the room. Technical papers were missing. Someone had already been through Tesla's belongings before his nephew arrived. 2 days after his death, the FBI ordered the Office of Alien Property to seize everything. 2 truckloads of material were removed from the Hotel New Yorker and transferred to the Manhattan Storage and Warehouse Company. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover personally declared the contents of Tesla's belongings most secret. This was despite the fact that Tesla had been a naturalized American citizen for over 50 years. The Office of Alien Property had no legal right to seize the belongings of an American citizen. They did it anyway. The official reason was that Tesla had claimed to have built a particle beam weapon, and at the height of World War II, the U.S. government could not risk those plans falling into enemy hands. Reasonable enough on the surface. But here is where the story becomes genuinely strange. Report that they were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and promotional character and contained nothing of significant value to this country. Nothing dangerous, nothing revolutionary, just the ramblings of an old man. 3 days to evaluate the life's work of the most prolific electrical genius in human history. And yet the files were classified. And yet some of them disappeared. Researchers writing to both the FBI and the Office of Alien Property in the years following were told by each agency to contact the other. Neither admitted to having the papers. For nearly a decade, Tesla's most sensitive documents existed in a bureaucratic no-man's land between 2 agencies that each denied possession. In 2016, 73 years after Tesla's death, the FBI finally released approximately 250 pages of Tesla-related documents under the Freedom of Information Act. 250 pages from a man who filled 500 pages of notes just during 9 months in Colorado. From a man who held over 270 patents across 27 countries. From a man whose belongings filled 2 truckloads when the government seized them. Where's the rest? Nobody has ever satisfactorily answered that question. What we do know is this. The technology that Tesla was working on in his final years was not fantasy. The principles behind wireless power transmission, the core of what Wardenclyffe was designed to demonstrate, are real. They have been confirmed by modern science. Today, wireless charging pads power smartphones. Wireless power. Transfer systems charge electric vehicles without cables. Resonant energy coupling, which is exactly the principle Tesla was exploring in Colorado Springs in 1899, is the basis of multiple cutting-edge energy technologies being developed right now in the 21st century. Tesla's ideas did not fail because they were wrong. They failed because the people who funded science in 1903 could not figure out how to charge for them. Think about what that means. Think about the last electricity bill you paid. Think about the infrastructure of poles and wires and substations and generating plants that stretches across every continent on Earth. Trillions of dollars of infrastructure. Trillions of dollars of ongoing profit for utility companies. All of it built on a system that deliberately chose Edison's metered, monetized model over Tesla's vision of free distributed power, not because Tesla's was less efficient, not because it was less safe, but because you cannot meter the Earth's electromagnetic resonance. You cannot charge someone for the natural electrical frequency of the planet they are standing on. The choice was not scientific, it was financial. And humanity has been paying for that choice, literally every single month, ever since. But here is the part that should keep you up at night, not with fear, but with wonder. Because Tesla's most radical ideas are not just old history, they are live science right now. Researchers at MIT demonstrated resonant wireless power transfer in 2007, lighting a 60-watt bulb from a power source 2 meters away with no physical connection, using the same fundamental principles Tesla had patented over a century earlier. Japan's space agency has been actively developing solar power satellites designed to beam energy from orbit to the surface of the Earth wirelessly. Exactly the kind of global energy distribution Tesla described in 1900. The Schumann resonances, the electromagnetic resonance frequencies of the Earth, ionosphere cavity, are now a well-established field of scientific study. They are exactly what Tesla was measuring and attempting to harness in Colorado Springs in 1899. The man was not ahead of his time. He was operating in a different dimension of time entirely. And then there's the question that the FBI files do not answer. The question that Tesla's missing notebook does not answer. The question that 2 truckloads of seized documents and 70 years of classification do not answer. What was in those final papers? What was in that black notebook with the pages marked government? What had Nikola Tesla figured out in those last quiet years in room 3327, surrounded by his beloved pigeons, sustained by milk and honey, with the entire scientific establishment having written him off as a relic? Mark Cypher, who wrote the most comprehensive biography of Tesla ever published, Wizard, The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla, spent years investigating this question. And what he found was not simple dismissal. What he found was a fracture inside the US government itself. While the MIT engineer Trump was officially concluding that Tesla's papers had no value, a group of military officers at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, including Brigadier General L.C. Craigie, the first pilot to ever fly a military jet aircraft, were quietly and seriously investigating Tesla's teleforce concept. Craigie told colleagues, according to Cypher, that there's something to this. The particle beam weapon is real. 2 entirely different conclusions, from 2 different branches of the same government, about the same set of papers. One group said nothing there. Another group said something very real. You are allowed to wonder which group was telling the truth. What is beyond dispute, confirmed by every credible historian, every declassified document, every patent record, is that Nikola Tesla was one of the most productive and far-reaching scientific minds in human history. A man who held 270-plus patents. A man who designed the AC electrical system that still powers most of the world today. A man who built a device in 1893 that he called a teleautomaton, a radio-controlled boat demonstrated in Madison Square Garden that could obey wireless commands, 30 years before anyone else built anything comparable. A man who was generating artificial lightning bolts longer than a football field in a wooden shack in Colorado in 1899. And this is a man who died broke, who was written out of history for decades, whose name was erased from the patents for radio, a patent that the United States Supreme Court restored to him in 1943, 6 months after his death, confirming that Marconi's radio patents had been built on Tesla's prior work, 6 months after he died. The court gave him credit for inventing radio 6 months after he was in the ground. This is the story of what happens when a mind is too free, too generous, and too uninterested in the mechanics of profit for the world that surrounds it. When genius collides with greed, when the future arrives too early for the present to afford it. But here is what matters. Here is what all of this builds toward. Tesla's machines were not buried forever. They were delayed. The Wardenclyffe Tower is gone, but its science lives. The Colorado Springs laboratory was torn down and its wood used to build houses in a neighborhood south of downtown. But the Colorado Springs notes, Tesla's 500 pages of experimental diary, survive. They have been published. Researchers have read them. Engineers have built working models based on them and confirmed what Tesla claimed. The Tesla valve is real and being studied in university laboratories right now. The Tesla turbine is being reconsidered for clean energy applications right now. Wireless power transmission, the core dream of Wardenclyffe, is a functioning technology right now, moving from laboratory demonstrations toward commercial reality right now. The work was never truly lost. It was waiting for a world that had finally caught up enough to understand what it was looking at, waiting for scientists without financial chains around their imagination, waiting for the moment when the cost of ignoring it finally outweighed the profit of suppressing it. That moment is here. And perhaps the most important thing to understand, the thing that transforms this story from a tragedy into something with the feeling of inevitability, of something that was always going to happen, is this. Tesla knew. He knew they were going to bury his work. He knew the money men were going to win. He knew that Wardenclyffe was going to fall. And he kept building anyway. He kept filing patents. He kept writing notes. He kept his laboratory notebooks. He kept the 500 pages from Colorado Springs. He documented everything, not because he believed the world of 1910 or 1920 or 1930 would receive it, but because he believed, with the certainty of a man who had looked at the resonance of the entire planet and seen it vibrate back, that eventually the right people would come. He was right. The machines were never truly forgotten. They were kept alive in equations and patents and hand-drawn blueprints and 500 pages of obsessive experimental notes written by a man who lit up 200 bulbs on a Colorado plain in 1899 and knew, with absolute certainty, that what he had found belonged to every human being on Earth. Nikola Tesla did not fail. He was stopped. There is a difference. And what was stopped 100 years ago is running again, in laboratories and patent offices and satellite designs and wireless charging systems, in resonance experiments, in the slowly growing understanding that the Earth itself is an electrical machine that a Serbian-American genius mapped in a summer of storms over Colorado, in a wooden shack with lightning bolts cracking through the sky, while the world went on around him completely unaware of what it had been given. The results did not stun researchers. They confirmed something researchers had been circling for a century. They confirmed that Tesla was right, that the machines worked, that the vision was real, that the suppression was real, and that the future he was building, the one they tried to bury with him in January of 1943, was never going to stay buried. Because you cannot bury physics, you can only delay it. And the delay is over.